And as we see the procession will be going on, we know that a lot of various agencies answer that call. Brian, do you still see that representation?
Oh, absolutely. And the procession is now beginning. You'll see the motorcade here coming towards us outside of Centerpoint Medical Center. A massive police response showing of their support, their condolences, and grieving all together this afternoon. Officer Allen, he was said to have served with pride and appreciation. He responded without hesitation, is what the chief said, and he always had a smile on his face, willing to diffuse and ready to diffuse the situation. These police here today in this procession come from Kansas City. They come from Independence. They come from throughout the metro. So many are offering their condolences and support. We've heard from officers in Kansas City, Kansas, as well as in Overland Park, Kansas, Leavenworth, Kansas, both sides of the metro today, all coming together to support their fellow brothers in blue today who lost their life. Just very compelling to see a showing of support, and the community has already planned a vigil for tomorrow night. There will be other ways to offer support as Independence really will sorely need it, having lost a third officer in almost as many years. 2024, 3 officers in 3 years is just very, very hard to take.
We're waiting this procession to begin, and once it does, as I said, we'll sort of step out of the way and let you witness what is happening right now outside Centerpoint Medical Center in Independence. And maybe, Brian, you may have an answer to this question. If you don't, that's okay. I presume they're either heading to a funeral home or perhaps the medical examiner's office. That's my guess. Do you have any information on that?
I don't. We'll try and find that out exactly where they're going, but I think regardless of where they're headed, it is compelling to see so many officers come together for this moment to show their solidarity for each other and the work that they do. The chief said there are several long days and weeks to come, but Officer Allen, Cody Allen, it will not be lost. He is a hero. He did exactly what he was called to do. And so it's very nice to see the police showing their support. It looks like there is a white van in the back, and that likely may have the body of Officer Cody Allen. We'll give a moment of silence so you can kind of see and just take it all in, as it appears the officers here are about to leave once the street gets cleared. A few cars are paused, but the officers are asking them to move forward now so they can begin this procession. I would imagine that the body of Officer Cody Allen will be in the white van, which will then head to the morgue. And here they go. that is the end of the procession then. Officer Allen was 35 years old, killed today, died in the line of duty, serving and protecting folks here in Independence. Massive procession, and you can see there are still dozens and dozens of officers here outside of Centerpoint Medical Center paying their respects, thinking of their colleague who had served in Grandview as well as Independence, and then decided he'd go out to the private sector, do something else, but felt it would be best to come back and fulfill his calling as a police officer here in Independence. And just very difficult for the Independence Police, who have now lost 3 officers killed in the line of duty, with Cody Allen leaving behind his wife and 2 children. And we're told they have a strong support system, but they will need all the support they can get from the community as they deal with this tragic loss. Officer Allen was someone who had a smile on his face. He could diffuse a situation. He had a beard, and that was a point of some levity with his colleagues when he came back. And just so many are dealing with the tragedy that it is to lose him today in the line of duty. Live in Independence, Brian Johnson, KMBC 9 News.
All right, Brian, thank you. As you look at live pictures right now of News Chopper 9 as that procession is moving away from Centerpoint Medical Center this afternoon, such a terribly sad and tragic scene that is unfolding in front of us right now. The Jackson County prosecutor, Jean Peters Baker, who spent quite a bit of a couple of hours at least at the scene this afternoon. She was out there early on and didn't leave until much later in the day, has issued this statement, and we will go ahead and share that with you right now. Our deepest condolences go to families of the 16th Circuit Court process server and the Independence police officer who died from fatal gunfire today in the course of their duties. We also offer sincere sympathies to the Circuit Court, the Independence Police Department, and the City of Independence. We pray for the 2 wounded Independence police officers, public servants who were also injured by gunfire. We acknowledge this is a great tragedy, but we also know the strength of this community. We will need that strength in the coming days. This remains a developing investigation. We will work closely with the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and we'll update as soon as possible on the status of the investigation and other actions by this office. So something else that we learned in that briefing some minutes ago, it will be the Missouri State Highway Patrol, the lead department, the lead agency in this ongoing investigation.
Again, 4 people in total were shot during this incident, which began around 1:10 this afternoon. The other 2 officers injured in the exchange are not being identified at this time. We know one has serious injuries. Both are expected to survive. As for those 2 victims, 35-year-old Officer Cody Allen, 42-year-old civil process server Jackson Max, both leave behind families, both leave behind children and partners. This is just an incredibly heartbreaking story to bring you today, and as something we'll continue to follow. And let's talk a little bit about process servers and how they are responsible for delivering court documents, and that's exactly what Mr. Max was doing at the time of his death. And as you heard the police chief of Independence talk about briefly, they found Mr. Mack lying on the ground at that home, and Officer Allen encountered Mr. Mack wanting to render aid, trying to get him to safety, and that's when he was met with gunfire. Hard story to update.
What we don't know, and there are a lot of things that we don't know at this point, this is an investigation that is really still in its very early stages. While there is one suspect in custody, we don't have any name to share with you right now. He apparently was injured in his arrest. The nature of his injuries apparently minor, but he is in police custody right now. One of the things that we still don't know just quite yet is what exactly, we know it was an eviction notice, but we don't know exactly the reason why this eviction notice was being served. Was it because the individual who lived in that house was behind on either rent or a mortgage, or was this a situation where there were back taxes? We don't know that yet, and that's one of the things that, of course, people are going to be asking about, and that the public will probably want to know as this story evolves. Drexel Mack with the 16th Judicial Circuit Court of Missouri. He had been with the court for over 12 years. He was described as a true public servant. His colleagues at the courthouse are devastated, and this was a man who was shot and who eventually died simply doing his job.
A number of Kansas City area police departments have sent messages of support following this incident. Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas: "My heart breaks for the Independence Police Department, all the family and friends of their officer who succumbed to injuries from a shooting. I am praying for all others impacted today, all of the women and men of law enforcement in the Kansas City area." We also briefly mentioned Missouri Governor Mike Parson sent out a statement on social media sending his condolences to the fallen officer and the civil process server.
As we watch these live pictures from News Chopper 9, I'm not exactly sure if they're on I-70 or perhaps 291. We'll try and figure that out for you just for the benefit of those of you who are just tuning in right now here on KMBC 9. But what you're looking at, if you've just joined us, for the benefit of those people, is a law enforcement procession leading from Center Point Medical Center, escorting the body of fallen Independence police officer Cody Allen, who was shot and died of his injuries as a result of gunfire as a civil process server was trying to serve an eviction notice out in eastern Jackson County in Independence in the area of North Elsie Smith Road and East Bunshoe Road. All of this beginning at around 1:09 this afternoon. And again, the numbers, again, for the benefit of those who are just joining us: 1 Independence police officer dead, 1 civil process server dead, 2 Independence police officers shot and wounded. Both of those Independence police officers are expected to survive, though we do know that one of those officers underwent surgery and is recovering from that procedure right now.
Independence Police Chief did confirm this information that the civil processor Drexel Max was shot first, and then initially he called for help. And once those officers arrived, Independence Police, it's believed to be they were the only law enforcement agency arriving at the scene at the initial shooting. And that's when they were met with gunfire. And that is when Missouri State Highway Patrol and other Kansas City area agencies arrived at the scene to assist with the investigation. You're
looking at those live pictures from News Chopper 9. This is a procession that is heading west on I-70 from Independence, we believe likely headed to the Jackson County Medical Examiner's Office. And then once the work that is needed to be done to continue this investigation is done at the Medical Examiner's Office, there will be another procession similar to what you're seeing right now to an area funeral home, as not just the city of Independence, but the entire Kansas City area and people in both states will be gathering to honor this officer's memory and offer support to his law enforcement brothers and sisters. They're westbound on 70 approaching Nolan Road in Independence. That's where they are right now.
And you can't help but to think about their family, Chris, and their children at this time. When they went to work this morning, they had no idea that this would be the outcome today.
I'm reminded of a term that I think is often used by people doing what we do for a living. We don't do that here, but is often used, and the term is a routine call. You hear that in media, and my friends in law enforcement, my longtime friends in law enforcement, taught me decades ago, there is no such thing as a routine call. Whether it's a traffic stop, whether it's someone who is serving an eviction notice, whether it could be anything. There is no such thing in law enforcement in what they do day in and day out. There's no such thing as a routine call. And every once in a while, I will hear that term being used and I will just bristle because nothing could be further from the truth. There is no such thing. There's never been such thing as a routine call. And you know, for those who might consider something like what happened today routine, not so much.
No. Grandview Police Department just released a statement saying that loss is so difficult, and especially when it happens to someone trying to do good and help others. Our hearts are heavy, and they are with the Independence Police Department at this time.
Well, we know this procession continues westbound on I-70. We knew that a few moments ago they were at Nolan Road. They're obviously going by they're heading downtown essentially, we believe, to the Jackson County Medical Examiner's Office, and another important step in this ongoing investigation, which again will be led by an outside agency, the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And this procession leading the body of 35-year-old Independence police officer, fallen Independence police officer Cody Allen, who was described by his boss, the police chief there in Independence, Adam Dustman, as a hero today. someone who tried to save the life of that civil process server who had been shot and wounded minutes earlier. In the process of giving first aid and trying to remove that victim from that dangerous scene, Officer Allen was shot and has died from his injuries. The police chief of Independence, again, making sure that everyone knows that this man is a hero and lost his life serving this community today.
Let's go back to Brian Johnson, who was at the Centerpoint Medical Center right before the procession began. Brian, we could hear the sirens and we see the red and blue lights, dozens of officers on scene. Describe the energy, the tone out there tonight.
Yeah, very somber, very, very somber. A lot of these officers knew Cody Allen. Some did not, but they know what it's like to be a first responder and the loss that that entire family is feeling tonight. Cody Allen was described as one of a kind, and that sums it up pretty much. He was known to be someone who could diffuse difficult situations. The chief of police, Adam Dussman, said that he responded without hesitation today as he answered the call, shots fired, with that court processor down. And so he ran in to help when many would not. The chief said he did exactly what he was called to do, what he signed up to do, and he served in several police departments over more than a decade. 35 years old, he had served in Independence as well as Grandview, decided to step out for a bit, go to the private sector, do something else, and then returned to police work because he felt that it was his calling, is what the chief of police, Adam Dussman, said as he described it. He had been back on the force in Independence again for 2 years when today's incident happened. He leaves behind a wife and his parents as well as 2 children. We're told that the family has a strong support system, but that they will need all the support the community can provide to them. He was described also as always having a smile and just so many good things that were said about him today, as so many are feeling the tragic loss that he will not be with us anymore, not be able to help in Independence. And this is the 3rd police officer in Independence to die in the line of duty in as many as 3 years, and that is too much for any police department to be asked to give. And so the chief of police kind of broke down today in talking about him personally, in talking about Cody Allen, the type of person that he is, and the tragic loss that it is, this tragic blow to the police force to lose another officer in the line of duty. Also speaking with us today was the presiding judge, Otto, from the 16th District Court, who talked a lot about Drexel Mack, who was serving those eviction papers at the home around 1 o'clock when this all happened. Drexel Mack had been with the court for 12 years. We're told he was in his 40s, was well liked in the court system, and that by all the employees. There are now 700 of his colleagues who got the notice that he won't be showing up to work tomorrow, as well as his fiancée and other loved ones. And so tonight, Judge Otto was offering the thoughts and prayers to his family and the entire court as they deal with this very difficult time. 2 public servants lost tonight, 2 public servants recovering, 4 people shot in all, just very tragic. Another shooting in Kansas City, leaving so many grieving tonight. Live in Independence, Brian Johnson, KMBC 9 News.
Hey, Brian, stay there for just a second. We're going to stay with, I know you don't have a monitor out there, but we're staying with live pictures right now of News Chopper 9. That's westbound I-70 as this procession continues heading downtown. Brian, I know you've been outside Centerpoint Medical Center for some time, and I know you have witnessed yourself the kind of law enforcement turnout outside the hospital in support of those men in blue who are inside. I assume there is still a heavy police presence, a big crowd of law enforcement people all coming together to honor these heroes.
Absolutely, Chris. Yeah, there's dozens, I didn't count, possibly more than 100 officers in that procession, as well as here outside the hospital. There have been dozens as well, just grieving the loss, talking with each other, offering support. There were several times where there were several different groups of officers and people in civilian clothing that were in a circle with their arms wrapped around each other, pausing for moments, as well as perhaps praying and offering support to each other. Yeah, so there have been hundreds of police here outside Center Point at various times throughout the day.
And we should be reminded of the fact that Center Point Medical Center obviously is still a very busy place, as there are 2 Independence police officers receiving care inside. Both of these officers were injured in this shooting this afternoon. One of the officers underwent surgery, and we are told is recovering and is expected to recover. That second injured officer, apparently minor injuries, and is recovering there. So I suspect that that law enforcement presence that you're seeing there, Brian, will last probably well into the night.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it will. And we should note, so many other officers remain working at this hour. It is a 24-hour job, 7 days a week. The response never stops. And throughout the metro, other officers who would like to be here, who would like to be present to offer their condolences and their support, have done so through social media. We've heard from the Kansas City, Kansas Police. We've heard from Leavenworth Police, Overland Park. It stretches beyond the state boundaries, and throughout the metro, officers are showing their support. We've also heard there will be a vigil in the coming days. I know some viewers have reached out saying that they are planning a vigil tomorrow night. And so, yeah, all kinds of support from civilians as well as police to show their appreciation, their love, and anything they can do to somehow soften this tragic loss in Independence.
And Brian, we just got the photo of Officer Cody Allen, a father, a husband, and a public servant. Right now, that photo, we've learned that Officer Allen, 12 years with public service, and tonight he has been fatally wounded.
And for the benefit of viewers just joining us, Brian, if you're still out there, I think it's especially interesting that this is a man who started in law enforcement, apparently in Grandview, then went to Independence, and for whatever reason decided to leave law enforcement and work in the public sector. But there is, for people who are in that community, who are in that family, there is something about that community and something about that family that obviously attracted Cody Allen back into law enforcement and back into Independence.
Yeah, 35-year-old wanting to, in his prime, wanting to help other folks. And that is what you hear from when you talk to police. This is something that they love. This is something they have a passion about. And it is something that they feel called to do. And it's something that they can't give up. It's really about giving back to the community, being there for them, and answering the call of duty to be able to serve and really make a difference in the world and feel that you are making a difference and feel that appreciation from folks as you lighten their load, as you protect them, and as you enforce the law that keeps society functioning. So yeah, so many people are feeling that today.
I'm also reminded of some of the earlier comments from Chief Dussman, Brian, that he was the guy who was expert at diffusing things, and he did so at a moment's notice, and he was always there to back up fellow officers, and that's exactly what was happening this afternoon out in Eastern Independence, outside that house on North Elsie Smith Road and East Bundschuh Road, where it all happened today.
Yes, exactly right, Chris. He was well liked by those who knew him on the force. He had an incredible smile, and he also was able to, as you said, diffuse any kind of situation. That's one big thing officers are constantly trained on, is de-escalation. And from what the chief, Adam Dussman, said, Cody Allen was an expert at that, at bringing intense situations down, as bringing some levity to situations when appropriate, and really just being that overall poster child, if you will, the image, the example of what it means to be an officer, to be kind and outgoing as well as responsive when the moment is needed, when the call comes. And he went in ready to serve and ready to answer that call today.
Brian, stand by there for just a moment. We just hit 6 o'clock. And for the benefit of viewers just joining us on KMBC 9, this is KMBC 9 News at 6 as we continue our coverage of what happened today in Eastern Independence. You are looking on the left at the photo of fallen Independence police officer Cody Allen, shot and killed this afternoon. On the right, live pictures from News Chopper 9, a police procession escorting the body of Officer Allen downtown from Centerpoint Medical Center to the Jackson County Examiner's Office.
And again, the Independence Police Department has confirmed that one of his officers, Officer Cody Allen, and a Jackson County process server have been killed. We know 2 more officers are hurt after a shooting that began during an eviction in Northeast Independence. Now, again, police have identified the fallen victims as 35-year-old Officer Cody Allen and Drexel Mack, a civil process server in his early 40s. Officer Allen, who had been with the Independent Police Department for 2 years and in law enforcement for much longer, is survived by a wife, 2 kids, and his parents. And as for Mack, an employee of the Jackson County Courts for 12 years, is survived by his fiancee.
And again, we have 1 Independence police officer shot and killed, a Jackson County civil process server shot and killed. 2 more Independence police officers were wounded in this. One of those officers undergoing surgery. Both of those injured officers expected to recover. There is 1 suspect in police custody right now. We don't know a whole lot about that suspect right now, but we are working to get new details there. And again, for the benefit of those just joining us here on Channel 9, this all started at about 1:09 this afternoon. A house in a rural area of Eastern Independence, again, North Elsie Smith Road, East Bunshoe Road, out in Eastern Jack. An individual inside that house was being served an eviction notice. We don't know why yet. We don't know if it was a situation where someone was behind on rent or perhaps had missed mortgage payments or maybe was facing a back taxes issue. But in the course of the serving of that eviction notice, gunfire happened and that civil process server was wounded. The civil process server was able to call 911 for help. Apparently some neighbors nearby also heard the gunshots and also called 911 for help, and that's when 3 Independence police officers, I should say, came upon the scene. So we're talking about a story here with not 1 but 2 shootings, and that second shooting involving those 3 Independence police officers, 1 shot and killed, 2 wounded. All of this again happening early this afternoon. Again, 1 person in custody. The investigation, obviously, in its early stages, it will be led by the Missouri State Highway Patrol, which is pretty much standard procedure in a situation like this.
And according to the Missouri State Highway Patrol, it was Mack that was serving that eviction notice when someone from inside that home began shooting at them. Again, the process server or potentially other court employees may have been at that scene, but when they called 911 for help, that's when Officer Allen and his colleague responded. And that's why we are here right now. Let's go out to Rebecca Gannon, who has been at the scene or nearby the scene pretty much most of the afternoon. Rebecca, what have you learned so far, and how is it out there? How is the atmosphere?
Well, as the sun's been setting, I mean, we've been out here for hours at this point in time. And to your point, I would just want to say we're about half a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile away from where this all happened. And as you've been saying, it happened right around 1:30 this afternoon. So Bunchun Road is the road right here behind me. And as you can see, it curves and it goes up. Then it turns, makes a nice dog leg, goes straight to the right, which is east on your screen as it goes off the screen there. And it's about half a mile away from there. That's where Bunshoe goes to. And as you mentioned, it's Elsie Smith Road. And that's where this whole situation unfolded. As Chris mentioned a little bit earlier, it's essentially 2 different shootings in the same location at 2 different times, and obviously multiple victims in that. This is a really rural area, as I'm sure you guys have seen, whether from its News Chopper 9 or just from everything that we've been talking about here. And with that, the investigation is going to take a lot of time because you don't have 14 witnesses that were in an apartment building, nor do you have, 10 homes that have Ring cameras all in a cluster really close to each other. So this is going to take a lot of time to piece together. Bunshoe Road did reopen right around 4:15, and that was pretty surprising considering that it was closed from essentially 1:30 onward. It took a lot to get even just the media into a staging area. And right now where we are is Anchor Point Baptist Church on top of the hill. So as I mentioned, we've kind of moved a little bit so you can kind of get a bigger picture of what the area is. It's eastern Jackson County. It's a pretty rural area, and it's only a couple miles away from the Fort Osage High School and the Indian Trail Elementary School here. So there is a lot to piece together, and there's going to be some people to talk to, but there's not going to be a whole lot for investigators to share with us. Obviously, we got some information earlier, and my colleague Peyton Headley will talk about that in just a little bit here. But more so, the situation here right now is as the sun has started to set, it's really gotten quieter. It's almost back to what I assume it would have been at noon today, because from about 2 o'clock onward, there were so many sirens. And I mean, within every minute or so, you just heard another set of sirens over and over again, whether it was an ambulance or a fire truck, or so many law enforcement coming out for that. And they were from the sheriff's office and obviously Independence Police and Kansas City Police, and so many different municipalities had someone coming here to help, because this is such a difficult situation to go through and such a chaotic situation at the time. But again, as we've hit the evening now, it's becoming a lot quieter. I would almost say back to normal, but obviously that's not going to be the case for so many families tonight. But that's what's happening here at Bundschuh Road, just off of Highway 7. What questions can I answer for you guys?
Yeah, Rebecca, you mentioned something that I think is worth repeating. Nearby that shooting scene, I believe two Fort Osage district schools, including Fort Osage High School, which was, I believe, on lockdown for some time this afternoon.
Excellent point, Chris. As we had heard the news about this, we were initially told go to Fort Osage High School because it's in the area of where it happened. I immediately called the district and said, what's going on? And the district spokesperson said, we are on lockdown, but it is solely as a precaution. We are miles away from where the shooting happened. None of our schools are involved in it, but as an absolute abundance of caution, we're going to lock down our schools. And that was around 1:45 in the afternoon, and they weren't dismissing for another hour or so, but she said we were absolutely locking down our schools, and they did. But then they also dismissed just right on time. By 3:30 in the afternoon, we saw a lot of school buses that were actually being rerouted because they weren't allowed to come down Bundschuh Road. Instead, they had to be rerouted around here. But they have, and that lockdown was lifted. And I'm sure there's going to be some discussions at the school tomorrow about what happened and what happened here, what happened half a mile away from here, and going forward what that looks like. Because I think, especially in the elementary school levels, we always tell kids to look for the helpers. And that's something that Mr. Rogers taught us, generations ago. But now, when you think about what happened to the helpers today, I think it carries a much more somber tone. And I think that's something that schools around the metro will have to deal with yet again. Chris.
Absolutely right. Rebecca, stay with us there for just a moment. More live pictures on the right from News Chopper 9 as the procession has arrived at the Jackson County Medical Examiner's office. And while we look at these live pictures and the photo of Officer Cody Allen, the Jackson County Executive Frank White has issued a statement and an order lowering flags across the county to half-mast. And the order reads like this: by the power vested in me by the Home Rule Charter of Jackson County, I hereby order all flags in the County of Jackson, State of Missouri, and all governmental buildings to be lowered to half-mast in honor of the lives and public service of Mr. Drexel Mack and Independence Police Officer Cody Allen. Rebecca, that scene that you're at right now, of course there was heavy police presence there earlier. I suspect it's, I don't know if anybody's still hanging around there or not, or is it just one of those situations where it's just us and it's back to some level of normalcy out there?
So this is all supposition because, again, we are half a mile, even 3/4 mile away from where this really happened. There is an Op 100 still underway there, and Peyton Headley will talk more about that in just a little bit. So there is still very much a law enforcement presence there at the scene. We don't have the sirens that are, going right by us. We don't have the flashing lights. We also haven't seen a lot of cars leave en masse, which tells me a lot of law enforcement either went to the east and then drove away, or they're all still there at the scene. And with that, when you've still got a tactical team on the ground making sure that everyone's safe, there's a lot that goes into making sure everyone is safe. And when you're in a situation like this, where, as we alluded to, 2 shootings in the same location, injuring or killing 3 people, we have to take every sort of precaution to make sure that everyone around the area is safe, including the law enforcement that are responding. So I imagine there is still a lot of law enforcement there. I think they're there in some capacity, whether it's support and whether that's emotional support or whether that is just tactical support, and making sure that everything goes as it should, because today has not gone as it should for several of our law enforcement and court officers today, and their families are definitely feeling that. The communities are feeling that right now. I think I talked about this a couple of hours ago, that so many in the metro, as they got home, as they turned on their radios, as they turned on the televisions, checked their screens, they saw what had happened here today and right over there here today. And there's a sense, there's a somberness, there's a lot of people are upset, a lot of people are frustrated with how this is going, and they don't know what to do and they don't know what to change, but they are speaking out and showing support. And I think that is something that our metro area does really well. Unfortunately, we've had too many instances where we've had to do that, but it is something that our metro area does well, and show support. Whether it happened in Independence, someone in Olathe is putting a picture up or something like that. There's a lot of support across the board tonight for the people of this community and the law enforcement officers of our community. Chris.
Rebecca, as you mentioned, as we sort of put this story together on live television, sort of piece by piece, you mentioned something that I'd like to amplify just a little bit. There is at the scene, at that house, North Elsie Smith Road and East Bunchue Road in Eastern Independence, a collection of law enforcement and specifically Kansas City, Missouri Police tactical officers right now. We don't know what stage their work is in right now, but they've been there since not long after the shooting, not long after the scene was secured. Presumably they are or have or are still looking for people inside that house. You have federal ATF agents making sure there aren't dangerous devices like explosives or anything like that. But these are law enforcement officers who are going through that house, going through that scene with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there's nobody else inside and to make sure there's nothing else that could be threatening to those law enforcement officers once the investigation of that scene inside that house begins. And in the case of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department...
Point of clarification,
yeah,
Chris.
Go ahead.
Point of clarification, Chris. I just want to say, in the briefing that we had, and again, Peyton Headley will probably touch on this more, in the briefing that we had, where Kansas City Police and Missouri Highway Patrol told us that there was an Operation 100, a tactical unit there on the scene, they had mentioned at the time no one had gone in that house yet. They wanted to make sure that everything was safe. They had no indication there was someone still in the house, but they said they had not gone into the house yet, at least from what I understand. And again, I think Peyton Headley can really touch on that in a little bit more detail than I can. But from what I understand, no one had gone inside the house. That may have changed in the last hour and a half, but that was the last briefing that we had, and the last thing I heard was that no one had gone into the house yet. There was no indication there was someone in the house, but they were taking their time out of an abundance of caution, and I think we can all understand why.
It's going to be an extensive investigation. Rebecca, thank you. Let's go to KMBC 9's Peyton Headley, who is also near the crime scene. And Peyton, you just arrived. Tell us what you've learned so far about this investigation.
Well, we know that it is still an ongoing and active investigation. I kind of want to go chronologically through what we know happened from that press conference that wrapped up a little more than an hour ago. So we know that Jackson County civil process officers went to this house to serve an eviction. I asked the press conference, the MSHP trooper who was speaking, if that's common practice, that they go on their own. He couldn't speak to that, but we know that a civil process officer had been shot and they called for backup. Independence Police responded, and when they responded while they were rendering aid to this officer who had been shot, they were shot as well. That's 3 Independence officers, one of them 35-year-old Cody Allen. he was killed. He leaves behind a wife and 2 young children. And the Jackson County civil process officer who was shot, he was killed as well. That's Drexel Mack. He has a fiance and adult children, we're told. Now, in any case like this, multiple different agencies responded, and we do know they have the male suspect in custody, but it's not clear how they took him into custody or where he was firing from. KCPD and MSHP both said that no one actually went inside of the house, and that could still be the case right now. So it is unclear how they got that suspect. We do know he has minor injuries, but again, this is a hard day for any police department and surrounding law enforcement agencies. But circling back to that investigation, KCPD, last to our knowledge, said that they are treating it as an Operation 100, and that is how they treat situations when they say someone is barricaded inside of a house. They don't think that anyone is still inside, but they're trying to be as safe as possible for some of these neighbors in the area. Some of the neighbors that they said were the ones that called 911. They heard those initial shots fired, and that is when Independence Police responded. So they are doing this all out of an abundance of caution. They don't think anyone else is inside, but they don't want to find out the hard way. So they are doing their best to de-escalate the situation. And again, you have to think these neighbors that are nearby, they heard the first shooting and they heard the second shooting. So likely a good move. They didn't go outside to check what was going on, but still an ongoing and active investigation just down the road here in Independence, guys.
Hey, Peyton, stand by there for just a moment. And for the benefit of viewers just tuning in, we have used the term Operation 100, and this may need a little bit of explanation. And Operation 100 is a term that I believe is exclusive to the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. It's a term that they have used for decades now. It means that specially trained tactical officers who are expert in a variety of law enforcement areas will converge on a scene. Often they will be responding to a person who is barricaded in a house or any sort of building. These are specially trained police officers, and they are available at a moment's notice. And in a situation like this, the Independence Police Department called upon the KCPD, and that's when the KCPD called out an Op 100, as it is commonly known within the department, and those officers are on that scene right now. Peyton, do we have any indication where the work that these tactical officers are doing, do we have any idea how far along they are, or what, if any, progress they've made?
We haven't heard since that last press conference that happened around 4:45, so about an hour and a half ago now. We know they're doing their best to de-escalate the situation. I imagine that they're trying to speak to anyone if they're inside of the house. I'm sure they've got all of the tools at their disposal out there right now. But currently, as of 6:15 this evening, we have no update as to how far this Operation 100 has gone. Chris.
Yeah, it's likely something that it will last as long as it will last. That's usually how these go. In many cases, in an Op 100 in Kansas City, Missouri, perhaps involving a barricaded individual, part of the team that responds to a situation like this includes hostage negotiators and people who are expert at diffusing situations and talking people out of dangerous situations, because priority one for any tactical officer in a situation like this is to make sure that it comes to an end, and it comes to an end with nobody hurt.
Right now, let's go to Independence Police Department, where we find KMBC 9's Darissa White. And Darissa, it looks like people are leaving bouquets of flowers and balloons for fallen officer Cody Allen. I see balloons right now on the screen.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Bria. Right now, a small memorial has started to form. There's another memorial that we'll get to a little bit later with 2 flags, but right here what you're looking at is just some balloons for the officer Cody Allen. We spoke with one lady who left the balloons. She said that her son is in fact a police officer, and she said the first thing that she heard when she heard about the shooting was her son, and it just brought tears to her eyes. She became very emotional, and she said that she had to pick up these balloons and leave these in front of the police department building. You know, it's a sad day. We spoke with another man who said he's a Vietnam vet. And I'm going to just turn right here. he left these 2 flags right here. He was visibly upset as well. He began crying. He said that this is a sad day for Independence. You know, we just lost the 2 officers in 2021. So he said that he wanted to leave these just to show his respect, just as a sign of, you know, respect, because this is a sad day. This brings tears to everyone's eyes. Both of the people that we spoke to got visibly emotional, and we'll bring you that a little bit later. But people are starting to leave flowers. They're starting to leave flags, balloons. I'm certain that there are going to be other tributes to Officer Cody Allen a little bit later. We also heard that the flags are going to be at half staff tonight. We're not sure exactly what time that's going to be, but they are going to come down. Right now they're at full staff, but just to pay respect to Officer Cody Allen. That's all from Independence in front of the police department. We'll send it back to you, Bria, and Chris in the studio.
Well, Darissa, you're outside Independence Police Headquarters there off the square in Independence, and I have to believe, after seeing your report outside the police station and the people that you have seen up to now, I tend to think that it is just the beginning of what will be one emotional scene after another throughout the evening.
Absolutely. I mean, the people that we spoke to were visibly upset. I mean, tears coming out of their eyes. The woman that we spoke to that left the balloons, she said that she just thought of her son. Her son is a police officer, and she said she had to come out here to pay their respect. The man, too, who left the 2 flags, he was visibly upset. I mean, this is a hard day for everyone in Independence, not only in Independence, but in Kansas City as a whole.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, that you're seeing not just people with obvious law enforcement connections coming to the Independence Police Department to share their thoughts and prayers, but people who aren't in law enforcement, who are citizens, who are taking a moment like this to honor the work and the sacrifice of these people every single day of the year.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to see more people just coming here. The police department plays a big role in this community, and everyone shows them so much respect because they have to do so much throughout the year. So I'm sure that we're going to see more people leave these tributes, the balloons, the flowers. There's a growing memorial on the other side. Someone left some flowers. I tweeted that out. Flags. This is a big deal. This, you know, they love their police officers. We love our police officers, and they just want to show respect.
Darissa, thank you. Again, Officer Cody Allen, 35 years old, 2 small children, a wife, a public servant. The list goes on. We heard his police chief talk about how dependable he was and how he was a person that they could rely on. So an incredibly heartbreaking story that we continue to update. And as we learn more information, we work to gather more details to bring you the latest info as we continue. Let's talk a little bit about those other officers that were injured, 2 of them, which one has serious injuries, but both are expected to survive. So at least that's an update that we could be happy about.
As we look at live pictures from News Chopper 9 there on the right of the end of that police procession, the Jackson County Medical Examiner's Office, let us touch base one more time with KMBC9's Brian Johnson outside Centerpoint Medical Center, which is where the injured were taken this afternoon and where we have seen, and I suspect, Brian, we continue to see a heavy law enforcement presence.
It seems to have, checking behind me now, there's a few left, but I think a lot of them have gone inside the hospital, gone home, gone to the medical examiners, or gone to colleagues. So it's actually starting to thin out here. This is such a tragic event caused by something senseless. Our records department here at Channel 9, they've been digging into this. The home where this happened apparently was purchased through some delinquent land sales last year, and so that some back tax issues. The house appears to have been sold, and that's what perhaps prompted the eviction notice, is because the change of hands. In dealing with the situation that came out of that. So many people have been impacted. 4 people shot, 2 people dead, and a police department now reeling with its 3rd officer killed in the line of duty in 3 years. The chief of police got very emotional this afternoon, calling Officer Cody Allen a hero, very much so, a unique, one-of-a-kind officer. And he said that he responded without hesitation and that he is proud of the example that Cody Allen left and so grateful for his deep love. Take a listen to what the chief was saying.
That Officer Allen is a hero. He did exactly what the men and women of law enforcement are called to do day in and day out. And I could not be more proud of him and his service to this community. He's actually served in several departments, first in Grandview, and then he came to us for several years. He is 35 years old, was 35 years old. Knowing Officer Allen, he took a job in the private sector to try something different and realized, like so many of us, that this is ingrained in who you are. So he answered that call to come back to Independence, and that's not lost on me. I could not be more proud of him, and this community could not be more proud of him.
When was that? When did he come back?
He's been back now for about 2 years.
Does he have any family, wife, children, parents?
Both, all of the above. So he has a wife, parents, and 2 small children, and so we just ask for privacy for them. Obviously, the days and weeks ahead, years ahead, a lifetime's worth. You don't ever fill that void. So we will stand with them. They have a very strong family support system to surround them, and we will be there. We will get through this. But as you can imagine, today is an absolutely devastating day. He always had a smile. He was the guy that when you go on a call, you knew he was going to be there. He could diffuse things in a moment's notice. He was right there to back you up. The beard that he grew, we always gave him some grief for in his return, but always had that smile. He is one of a kind. He is a human being among human beings.
Cody Allen there being described by Chief of Police Adam Dustman, and talking about how he's one of a kind, and talking about his history with the department. 35 years old, he had served in Independence, served in Grandview, decided he wanted to get out of law enforcement, go into the private sector, be an everyday citizen, and after a bit of that, he really realized, no, this is what I'm called to do. I have to serve. Came back to Independence Police, had been serving for 2 years now, back again, more than a decade of service when today's event happened. The chief of police saying of Cody Allen, he did exactly what he was called to do. Just some incredible words talking about the character, the nature of who Officer Allen is, and the tragic loss that his family is feeling so profoundly. His wife, his 2 children, his parents, his community now wrapping their arms around this family, as well as we heard about Drexel Mack, who is the court processor. He was killed as well today. He had spent 12 years with the 16th Circuit Court. He's in his 40s, and he was well liked by coworkers, had been with the court for more than 12 years now. And in talking to the presiding judge, this has never happened where they have had a court process server killed or in the line of duty shot while delivering eviction notices or any kind of court documents like this. And so a huge number of people tonight who know these people are feeling that loss, as well as the entire county. And really it goes beyond the state boundaries. We've heard from Kansas City, Kansas Police, Leavenworth Police, as well as officers in Overland Park, all offering their condolences. Independence having lost a 3rd police officer killed in the line of duty in 3 years. Live in Independence, Brian Johnson, KMBC 9 News.
Hey, Brian, real quick, I want to take you back to some of our reporting before those sound bites from Chief Dustman. And I just want to make sure that we heard this reporting correctly. the eviction notice that was being served this afternoon at that house in the area of North Elsie Smith Road and East Bundschuh Road, the result of a back tax issue? Did I have that correct?
Yes, exactly right. The assignment desk gave me that update, saying that the house had been purchased through delinquent land sales tax transaction late last year, that the house had been purchased, and so the new owner presumably had legal authority of it, was asking for the property because it had gone through delinquent. And so, yes, that's exactly right. As part of that process, then the new owner files with the county. The county then has to serve the eviction notice following the standard protocol of how that process works. And that process, the court process server, going to the house this afternoon, delivering those papers, getting shot at, calling for help then from police, and Officer Cody Allen was among those that responded. He was shot and killed, as well as 2 other Independence police officers who are expected to recover, expected to survive after getting out of Centerpoint. They've been in Centerpoint Medical Center today in surgery and recovering from their gunshot wounds. Chris.
Hey, Brian, one quick question, and we'll let you go for now. Do we know how much in back taxes are we talking about? And obviously, this is a story that we continue reporting on behind the scenes, but I'm wondering if you have any information, even a dollar amount of what we were talking about here, and if not, completely understand, we'll get those answers eventually. But do we know how much in back taxes we're talking about?
Yeah, great question, Chris. And no matter the dollar amount, senseless, this violence. Right now, we don't have a dollar amount, but typically landowners will have a number of years to get caught up on any delinquency in taxes. I believe it's 3 years before the property then goes to auction at the courthouse, and a buyer can then buy it, pay the back taxes, and acquire the land, and then move forward with the process of taking possession of the home. That is some of the information we're looking into. The exact dollar amount I don't have for you right now, Chris.
Brian Johnson on top of it all, as always, outside Centerpoint Medical Center.
Brian, thank you. The 16th Judicial Circuit Court released a statement saying that we are devastated that a court employee who is a public servant was shot by a member of the public while performing their job. Again, we're talking about Drexel Mack, who is the civil process server. And again, Mack was at the home serving an eviction notice when someone from inside that home began shooting at him. Here's what we know about the suspect at this time. We know it's a man. We are working to confirm the age and also just the circumstances surrounding this deadly shooting.